For years, the world's biggest geopolitical story seemed obvious. America was the dominant power. China was rising. Russia was challenging the West. Everyone focused on the rivalries. But what if they were looking in the wrong direction? Because while headlines have been dominated by wars, sanctions, trade battles, and military standoffs, something much bigger may be quietly taking shape across Eurasia. 3 countries, 3 nuclear powers, 3 civilizations that have shaped history for centuries: Russia, India, China. And if these 3 giants ever find a way to move in the same direction, the consequences could reshape global power itself. At first, that sounds impossible. India and China have fought wars. Their troops have faced each other along the Himalayas. Russia and China spent decades distrusting one another during the Cold War. India works closely with the United States in several strategic areas. On paper, this should never work. And yet, despite all of that, something unusual is happening. Across the world's biggest capitals, policymakers are paying closer attention, not because Russia, India, and China have become allies overnight, but because their interests are beginning to overlap in unexpected ways. Russia is locked in a historic confrontation with the West. China faces growing pressure from the United States over trade, technology, military power, and Taiwan. India is rising rapidly, but refuses to become anyone's junior partner. Different ambitions, different interests, but an increasingly common goal. A world where power is no longer concentrated in a single capital. That idea has a name: RIC, Russia, India, China. For years, RIC was little more than a diplomatic concept discussed by strategists and policymakers. Most people ignored it. There were simply too many rivalries and too many reasons for it to fail. But today, the question is no longer whether RIC exists. The question is whether it could become one of the most important geopolitical forces of the 21st century. Because the numbers are staggering. Together, Russia, India, and China represent more than 3 billion people. They possess enormous military power, vast energy reserves, advanced industries, nuclear arsenals, and some of the world's most important markets. If they cooperate even partially, they could influence trade, energy, finance, diplomacy, and security across multiple continents. And that is where things become very interesting. Imagine Russian energy fueling Asian growth. Imagine Chinese manufacturing operating at massive scale. Imagine India's rapidly expanding economy becoming another engine of global influence. Suddenly, RIC stops looking like a diplomatic acronym. It starts looking like a geopolitical earthquake. But before anyone predicts a new alliance, there is one enormous problem. India and China do not trust each other. The border dispute remains unresolved. Both countries compete for influence across Asia. Both see themselves as future leaders of the developing world. This is the contradiction at the heart of the story. The same countries that could reshape global power are also the countries most capable of preventing it. And that is why RIC remains one of geopolitics' biggest unanswered questions. Because history shows that nations do not cooperate because they trust one another. They cooperate because circumstances force them to. Today, Russia, India, and China do not need a common army. They do not need a shared flag. They only need enough overlapping interests to work together when it matters. And those interests are growing. BRICS is expanding. Calls for a multipolar world are becoming louder. Emerging powers are demanding greater influence over the international system, which brings us to the real question. What happens if RIC succeeds? Not as a military alliance, but as a strategic partnership capable of coordinating trade, energy, diplomacy, and global influence. The answer could be profound. Trade routes could shift, financial power could move, international institutions could face new challenges. The geopolitical order that has dominated the world for decades could begin to change. And that is why leaders everywhere are watching closely. Because this story is not really about Russia. It is not really about India. It is not really about China. It is about who will shape the future. And if these 3 giants ever find a way to cooperate more than they compete, the next great shift in global power may already have begun.